Among history's most remarkable figures, two women stand whose strength and legacy still echo across centuries: Henrietta of England and Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll. Let us begin with the first, Henrietta of England. Henrietta of England was born on the 16th of June in the year 1644 at Bedford House in Exeter, England. What happened to this fragile princess born during civil war, sheltered in a besieged town and separated from her father before she could walk? How did she transform from a child in hiding to a diplomatic bridge between two royal courts? What strength did she carry, navigating scandal, politics, and heartbreak at the very center of power? Please watch my full video until the end, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you. Now, let us dive into the full story. Henrietta's arrival into the world came during one of England's darkest hours, as the English Civil War raged and her mother, Queen Henrietta Maria, sought refuge in the West Country. After a difficult birth, her life was entrusted to Lady Dalkeith, a loyal guardian who risked everything to protect the infant princess. Her father, King Charles I, arranged for her to be baptized in the Church of England at Exeter Cathedral. Though she was a Stuart by blood, the winds of war would soon scatter her family, forcing her mother to flee and leaving baby Henrietta in England under dangerous circumstances. Even before her first birthday, Henrietta's story had already begun in the shadow of uncertainty, duty, and royal peril. Henrietta's earliest years were marked by danger, secrecy, and sacrifice. As the royalist cause faltered, Queen Henrietta Maria made the agonizing decision to leave England, but not without her baby daughter. Fearing for Henrietta's safety, she entrusted her to Lady Dalkeith, who disguised herself as a commoner and undertook a perilous journey to France. The infant princess was wrapped in obscurity, carried through hidden routes, and smuggled out of England under constant threat. The journey across the English Channel was treacherous. Storms and enemy patrols could have ended it all, but fate allowed mother and child to reunite in France. The court of her cousin, young Louis XIV, became Henrietta's new world. Though she had been born an English princess, France would now shape her education, her faith, and her destiny. She was lovingly called Minette and welcomed at the Louvre, where she and her mother were granted apartments and a pension. This flight from England did more than save Henrietta's life. It severed her from the land of her birth and steeped her in a new identity. Raised among French nobility, she would soon be known not as a Stuart exile, but as a courtly treasure of France. Yet the memory of her homeland and her place within it would never fade entirely. Her double heritage would come to define both her strength and her sorrow in the years to come. Settling into the grandeur of the French court, young Henrietta was introduced to a world far different from the war-torn England she had left behind. At the Louvre, she lived under the careful eye of her mother, Queen Henrietta Maria, and quickly adapted to the customs and language of her adopted home. The French called her Henrietta d'Angleterre, a princess from across the Channel, yet one of their own. It was here that her mother decided to raise her in the Roman Catholic faith, a choice that would later carry deep political and personal implications. During the years of the Fronde, the civil war that shook France from 1648 to 1653, Henrietta's early stability was once again disrupted. The Louvre offered limited protection from unrest, but the bonds she formed during this time, especially with the young Louis XIV and his brother Philippe, would prove lasting. Though still a child, Henrietta was surrounded by the intrigue, rivalry, and elegance that defined the Bourbon court. She was given the name Anne in honor of her aunt, Anne of Austria, and spent her formative years in a rich cultural environment filled with poetry, drama, and diplomacy. Her early correspondence showed signs of wit and charm. Yet even in comfort, the weight of her father's execution and her status as an exiled princess remained. France embraced her, but her English bloodline haunted her future, setting the stage for a life suspended between two crowns. As Henrietta grew older, her life at the French court blossomed into a complex dance of refinement, faith, and royal expectation. Raised alongside princes and princesses of Bourbon blood, she was educated in languages, etiquette, literature, and the arts. Her charm and intelligence drew admiration, and her natural grace made her a favored presence in salons and courtly gatherings. Yet beneath the silks and ceremony, she remained the daughter of a martyred king, a girl shaped by loss and the shadow of political exile. Queen Henrietta Maria, ever protective, ensured her daughter was well positioned in courtly life. Though her English birth made her somewhat distinct, it also lent her a mysterious allure. Suitors were whispered about, but her status as an exiled princess complicated all prospects. Her mother dreamed of marrying her to the French king himself, young Louis XIV, but that hope faded when he was pledged to Maria Theresa of Spain. Still, the attention Henrietta received at court was undeniable. She became close to Philippe, Duke of Orleans, the king's younger brother, a bond that would eventually alter her future. As Philippe's attentions deepened, Henrietta began to navigate the delicate world of French royal politics, where marriage was more than love, it was legacy. For the young Stuart princess, every glance and gesture was weighed with consequences. Her royal upbringing had prepared her to be admired, but soon it would demand far more. The year 1660 marked a turning point in Henrietta's life. With the restoration of the monarchy in England, her exiled brother Charles was proclaimed Charles II, and the Stuart family regained its throne. For Henrietta and her mother, the news brought both hope and opportunity. At their residence in Colombe near Paris, plans began to form. They would return to England not as exiles, but as royal kin restored to power. Henrietta had not seen her homeland since infancy, and the journey was deeply emotional. In October 1660, she and her mother sailed from Calais to Dover, welcomed at Dover Castle with renewed dignity. This return was not only symbolic, it was strategic. Queen Henrietta Maria sought to secure a proper dowry for her daughter and strengthen Stuart alliances. Meanwhile, Henrietta herself grieved the sudden death of her beloved brother Henry, Duke of Gloucester, who died of smallpox that same year. While in England, marriage negotiations accelerated. The French court had already shown interest in Henrietta as a bride for Philippe, Duke of Orleans. And now, with royal standing restored, Charles II agreed to offer a generous dowry. By late 1660, her hand had been formally requested. Henrietta's return to English soil was brief but powerful. It reaffirmed her status, reshaped her future, and signaled the next chapter of her life, one that would bind her forever to France, yet deepen her role as a diplomatic thread between two kingdoms. Henrietta's marriage prospects had long been the subject of speculation at the French court, but it was the ambitious Philippe, Duke of Orleans, younger brother to Louis XIV, who ultimately won her hand. Known for his extravagance and complicated personal life, Philippe's interest in Henrietta was more than romantic. Their union offered political balance, royal legitimacy, and personal prestige. Though Philippe had rivals in Henrietta's rumored admirers, including Charles Emmanuel of Savoy and the Grand Prince of Tuscany. It was his position as Monsieur, the king's brother, that made the match undeniable. Queen Henrietta Maria insisted on returning to England to arrange the dowry herself, seeking to protect her daughter's interests and manage family tensions. Among her concerns was her other son, the Duke of York, whose secret marriage to Anne Hyde had caused scandal. Henrietta, meanwhile, was mourning deeply. In September 1660, her brother Henry died of smallpox, followed weeks later by her sister Mary, Princess of Orange. These losses weighed heavily on her spirit as marriage plans moved forward. Despite grief and court distractions, Philippe remained determined. With support from Louis XIV, he formally proposed. Henrietta's dowry was fixed at 840,000 livres, and additional funds and estates were promised. The marriage contract was signed on the 30th of March in 1661, and the lavish ceremony followed the next day. Henrietta was now Madame, Duchess of Orleans, a title of elegance, but also of enormous expectation. Henrietta's marriage to Philippe, Duke of Orleans, began with celebration and promise. As the new Madame, Duchess of Orleans, she stepped fully into the role of a royal wife at the opulent French court. Initially, Philippe was affectionate and doting, and Henrietta enjoyed a period of admiration and influence. Their residence at the Palais des Tuileries became a hub of style and culture, with Henrietta quickly emerging as one of the court's most radiant figures. But the harmony was short-lived. Philippe's jealousy, complicated affections, and suspected relationships with male favorites, most notably the Chevalier de Lorraine, soon cast shadows over their union. At the same time, Henrietta's own charm drew many admirers, including the Count of Gitch, whose open flirtation stirred gossip. Rumors whispered that even King Louis XIV had once held affections for his cousin-in-law, though his later attentions turned to Henrietta's lady-in-waiting, Louise de la Vallière. Court life around Henrietta became a swirl of rivalry, affection, and strategic maneuvering. Her position as both wife and sister-in-law to the king gave her visibility, but not peace. Philippe's insecurities and the court's watchful eyes ensured that every move she made was analyzed and often criticized. Yet, Henrietta held her ground. Intelligent, graceful, and politically astute, she learned to navigate the treacherous dynamics of Versailles with a smile that concealed her personal battles. She was no longer the sheltered exile. She was a duchess in the heart of France's most powerful court, where beauty and betrayal walked hand in hand. As Henrietta settled into her new role, her private life became the subject of endless court speculation. Her elegance and charisma attracted admiration, but also suspicion. Gossip swirled about her relationship with the Count of Gitch, a striking nobleman who had allegedly once been involved with her husband. Their rumored affair, whether real or exaggerated, fueled Philippe's resentment and fanned flames of public scandal. The once affectionate marriage quickly turned cold, strained by accusations, jealousy, and wounded pride. Meanwhile, Louis XIV, who had once shared a warm, cousinly bond with Henrietta, began an affair with her lady-in-waiting, Louise de la Vallière. Ironically, it was Henrietta who introduced the two, hoping to divert attention away from her own rumored liaison. Louise's rise as royal mistress brought tension into Henrietta's household, but it also provided her some cover from Philippe's growing hostility. Despite the turmoil, Henrietta maintained her dignity in public. She gave birth to several children, though only 2 daughters would survive: Marie-Louise, born in 1662, and Anne-Marie, born in 1669. The tragic loss of her infant son, Philippe Charles, and multiple miscarriages deepened her sorrow, sorrows she bore with quiet strength. Her court became known for its cultural brilliance, even as her marriage frayed behind closed doors. Through it all, Henrietta remained poised, a woman both adored and judged, navigating the razor's edge of royal life. She had mastered the performance, but the emotional cost was mounting. France had embraced her, yet it never truly protected her. Despite the trials of her personal life, Henrietta of England emerged as one of the most cultured and respected women at the French court. She cultivated friendships with some of the greatest minds of her age: Molière, Racine, La Fontaine, and Bussy Rabutin, all of whom admired her intellect and wit. Her correspondence reveals a woman of sharp insight, capable of navigating not only royal intrigue, but the broader cultural currents of 17th century Europe. Henrietta was also known for her love of gardening and the arts. She created a celebrated water garden at the Palais Royal and assembled a distinguished collection of paintings, including works by Van Dyck and Correggio. Her refined taste helped shape the aesthetic of her court, attracting poets, artists, and thinkers alike. In an era when women's voices were often silenced, Henrietta found subtle ways to express influence through elegance, patronage, and conversation. Yet her grace extended beyond culture. She possessed a rare talent for diplomacy. Her unique position as an English princess married into the French royal family gave her access to both courts. She was viewed as a potential bridge between the two nations, especially as tensions rose across the Channel. Quietly, patiently, she built networks of trust and communication, all while maintaining her charm and public composure. Beneath the layers of pearls and protocol, Henrietta was crafting a legacy not just of beauty, but of strategic brilliance. Beneath Henrietta's regal exterior was a heart often burdened by sorrow. Her years as Duchess of Orleans were marked not only by courtly pressures, but by deep maternal anguish. She gave birth to 8 children, yet only 2 survived into adulthood. The emotional weight of this repeated loss left visible traces on her spirit. In July of 1664, Henrietta bore a son, Philippe Charles, who was given the title Duke of Valois. Though his birth was celebrated, the joy was short-lived. Just 2 years later, the little Duke died of convulsions, a tragedy that shattered Henrietta. The death of her only son left a void not easily filled, and those close to her noted a visible change in her demeanor. She was quieter, more withdrawn, yet still fulfilled her duties with grace. Tragedy continued to visit. A stillborn daughter followed in 1665, and several miscarriages haunted the years thereafter. The rhythm of her life, public appearances, private mourning, and court obligations, never allowed her full space to grieve. Yet in the privacy of her salons and letters, glimpses of pain emerged, sometimes masked in poetry or quiet reflection. Despite this grief, Henrietta poured herself into her surviving daughters, Marie-Louise and Anne-Marie. She ensured they received the best education and emotional care possible. For a woman who had lost so much, their presence became both anchor and hope. In a world that demanded perfection, Henrietta endured, not only as a duchess, but as a mother mourning children the world never saw grow. By the late 1660s, Henrietta's role at court had evolved beyond courtly elegance. She had become a vital link in Franco-English diplomacy. Her close bond with her brother, King Charles II of England, placed her in a unique position to act as an intermediary between the two crowns. When Charles began secret negotiations with Louis XIV to form an alliance against the Dutch Republic, it was Henrietta he trusted to carry the message. The plan was bold. England would abandon its alliance with the Dutch and Sweden in favor of supporting France's territorial ambitions. In return, France would assist Charles in consolidating power and secretly converting to Catholicism. Henrietta, understanding the delicacy of the matter, agreed to travel to England herself, both as sister and diplomat, to ensure the treaty's success. In May of 1670, she crossed the Channel and was received in Dover with royal honors. On the 1st of June, the treaty was signed in complete secrecy. Only a handful of trusted courtiers knew its contents. Henrietta's charm, discretion, and persuasive strength had made the impossible possible. Her presence reassured both monarchs, and her efforts sealed a political agreement that would not be publicly revealed until over a century later. The mission revealed Henrietta's sharp political instincts and deep sense of loyalty. Though her marriage in France remained strained, she had found another form of purpose, as a bridge between two great kingdoms, navigating faith, ambition, and secrecy in the corridors of power. Henrietta's final return to England in May of 1670 was far more than a family visit. It was the closing act of a mission shaped by diplomacy, courage, and personal sacrifice. After years of tension between England and France, her presence in Dover symbolized a rare moment of unity. The secret Treaty of Dover had been negotiated with care, and Henrietta's arrival ensured its confirmation in the most intimate and persuasive terms. For 6 days, she stayed on English soil, engaging privately with her brother Charles II and a select circle of advisors. Publicly, she appeared radiant, confident, and gracious, a Stuart princess returned in triumph. Privately, she bore the weight of immense political pressure. With each conversation and gesture, she helped solidify a fragile pact that would change the trajectory of European power. The visit also had emotional depth. Henrietta walked the land of her birth as a woman transformed. No longer the infant carried in exile, but a duchess wielding influence on an international stage. Her connection with Charles remained strong, grounded in childhood memories and shared grief. They spoke not only of politics, but of family, faith, and the uncertain future ahead. On the 18th of June, Henrietta departed England for the last time. As the ship pulled away, she left behind not only her homeland, but also the brief peace she had helped craft. She did not know it, but her story was nearing its final chapter, one filled with mystery, pain, and an enduring legacy. Only days after her return from England, Henrietta's health took a sudden and terrifying turn. On the 29th of June in the year 1670, while staying with her husband at St. Cloud, she drank a glass of iced chicory water, a common refreshment. Within moments, she clutched her side in agony and cried out, "Ah, what a pain! What shall I do? I must be poisoned!" Her words, spoken in panic, ignited a firestorm of suspicion across the court. The pain was unbearable. Doctors rushed to administer treatments for colic and poisons, while her attendants searched for answers. Within hours, word spread through the palace. By 2 o'clock in the morning on the 30th of June, Henrietta was dead, just 26 years old. Her sudden death sent shockwaves through France and England alike. Henrietta of England passed away on the 30th of June in the year 1670 at St. Cloud in France. Though officially declared to have died of a severe intestinal illness, suspicions of poisoning lingered, making her death one of the most debated tragedies of her era. The truth behind Henrietta's death remains shrouded in doubt. Whether by poison, illness, or a fatal combination of both, the final moments of her life were consumed by pain, fear, and unanswered questions. A princess once caught between nations now lay silent, her voice lost, but her mystery only beginning. The death of Madame, as Henrietta was known in France, plunged both courts into mourning, but also into a haze of confusion and suspicion. Her sudden collapse and chilling last words had ignited a scandal that no royal decree could fully silence. The French royal family, alarmed and sorrowful, gathered at St. Cloud while physicians prepared for an autopsy in the presence of nearly 100 observers, including English envoys and leading nobles. The official verdict, death from cholera morbus, was met with skepticism. Henrietta's supporters pointed to the political enmities and jealousies that had stalked her marriage. The Chevalier de Lorraine, long despised by Henrietta, was arrested briefly, but released without charge. Philippe, her husband, was accused by some of being indifferent, more concerned with claiming her possessions than mourning her passing. Even her funeral was marked by subtle tensions, as her legacy became a matter of reputation, inheritance, and public memory. On the 4th of July, Henrietta was buried in the Basilica of St. Denis, resting place of French royalty. The ceremony was grand and solemn, attended by Queen Maria Theresa, foreign dignitaries, and nearly the entire French court. Bishop Bossuet, famed for his eloquence, delivered a funeral oration that would become legendary in French rhetoric, honoring Henrietta not just as a duchess, but as a woman of intellect, courage, and grace. Mourning statues, cloaked in allegory, surrounded her golden-draped coffin. Among them stood figures of youth, poetry, and music, each paying tribute to the life cut tragically short. The palace that once echoed with her laughter now carried only silence and the questions she left behind. Henrietta of England's story did not end with her mysterious death. It echoed through dynasties, diplomacy, and the daughters she left behind. Her eldest child, Marie-Louise, became Queen of Spain, though she too died young at the age of 26, under similarly sudden and suspicious circumstances. Her youngest daughter, Anne-Marie, would go on to marry the Duke of Savoy and later become Queen of Sardinia. Through Anne-Marie's descendants, Henrietta's blood would flow into the royal lines of France, Spain, Belgium, Italy, and Luxembourg. But beyond royal marriages and titles, Henrietta's legacy rests in the grace with which she lived amid constant turmoil. Born into civil war, raised in exile, and caught between two powerful kingdoms, she turned fragility into strength. Her role in securing the secret Treaty of Dover demonstrated not only political acumen, but courage, stepping into roles few women were permitted to hold. She was in many ways a quiet architect of European diplomacy. To the French, she remained Madame Cultured, luminous and tragic. To the English, she was a Stuart sister lost too soon, but never forgotten. Her life is a testament to the power of resilience and to the complex paths carved by women at the heart of royal power. From the child who fled by night across the Channel to the Duchess mourned in golden cloth, Henrietta of England remains a symbol of strength, sorrow, and unspoken influence. Let us now turn to another remarkable figure of royal descent. Princess Louise was born on the 18th of March in the year 1848 at Buckingham Palace in London, in the United Kingdom. How did this vibrant daughter of Queen Victoria forge her own path within a world defined by duty, silence, and tradition? What legacy did she leave as an artist, reformer, and royal who dared to think independently? And how did a princess known as Little Miss Y challenge the rules of empire with both elegance and courage? From the very beginning, Louise was marked by energy and curiosity. As the sixth child and fourth daughter of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, she was born into the heart of the British monarchy at the height of its power. Yet she would never be content to play a passive role within the royal fold. Her early days were spent moving between the stately halls of Windsor Castle, the green grounds of Balmoral, and the refined corridors of Osborne House. Her childhood was shaped by strict structure, but also by a growing awareness of the wider world. Under the influence of her father's progressive ideas, Louise's education included not only reading and languages, but also carpentry, design, and even farming. She showed early signs of artistic talent and a fierce independence that set her apart from her siblings. While still a young girl, she earned the affectionate nickname Little Miss Y, not for mischief, but for constantly asking questions. That spirit would shape a remarkable life yet to unfold. Princess Louise's early years unfolded across the most iconic residences of the British monarchy. From the grandeur of Buckingham Palace to the windswept beauty of Balmoral Castle, she lived a childhood surrounded by elegance and expectation. Yet despite the wealth of her surroundings, Louise's upbringing was not one of idle luxury. Her parents, especially Prince Albert, believed in a disciplined and structured education for all their children, girls included. She spent her formative years rotating between royal homes, Buckingham Palace in London, Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, Windsor Castle in Berkshire, and Balmoral in the Scottish Highlands. Each location brought its own atmosphere. Osborne was cozy and artistic, Windsor formal and ceremonial, Balmoral wild and freeing. These contrasting environments shaped Louise's love of nature, appreciation for art, and longing for freedom within a tightly regulated royal household. Unlike some of her more dutiful siblings, Louise began to show signs of spirited resistance to the confines of palace life. She questioned rules, disliked the rigid rituals of the court, and eagerly absorbed everything from carpentry and sculpture to current events. Her energy was not always welcomed. Queen Victoria often viewed Louise's restlessness as improper, though even she admitted her daughter was clever and strong-willed. In a family steeped in protocol, Louise's early curiosity and outspokenness marked her as different. While the world saw a princess in pearls, inside those palace walls lived a young girl who longed for more than tiaras. She craved purpose, knowledge, and the space to grow beyond expectation. From a young age, Princess Louise stood out not only for her royal birth, but for the remarkable curiosity that shaped her early identity. She was constantly asking questions, probing the world around her with a hunger for understanding that earned her the nickname Little Miss Y. Within the royal household, where obedience was prized and questions discouraged, this trait was both endearing and disruptive. Louise's fascination with learning extended far beyond her assigned lessons. She devoured books, challenged conventions, and explored the arts with uncommon passion. Drawing and sculpture came naturally to her, and she quickly outpaced her early tutors. Hallam Tennyson, son of the famed poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, once remarked that Louise could draw beautifully. Her artistic talents would later evolve into professional-level sculpting, rare for any woman in the 19th century, let alone a princess. But her creativity didn't stop at the easel or sketch pad. Louise also loved dance, music, and performance, throwing herself into sword dances and stage plays with energy and joy. Her mother noted that she danced with more verve and accuracy than any of her sisters, a compliment that hinted at Louise's precision and fearlessness. In many ways, she was the most modern of Queen Victoria's daughters, questioning, expressive, and unwilling to be confined by the expectations of a royal woman. Her pursuit of knowledge and personal expression laid the foundation for a life that would defy convention and quietly reshape the image of what a British princess could become. The joyful rhythm of Louise's youth came to an abrupt halt in December of 1861 when her father, Prince Albert, fell gravely ill. Diagnosed with typhoid fever, he passed away on the 14th of December, plunging the royal household into profound mourning. Louise was just 13 years old enough to understand the loss, but too young to be prepared for the emotional weight that followed. Queen Victoria was devastated. Her grief reshaped every corner of royal life, turning vibrant halls into silent chambers of sorrow. Black clothing, hushed voices, and endless rituals of mourning became the new normal. For Louise, the court's gloom was suffocating. On her 17th birthday, she asked if the ballroom could be reopened for dancing, a simple wish for joy, but her request was denied. Her mother saw it as insensitive, and the disagreement drove a quiet wedge between them. Louise's natural spark, once celebrated, was now met with suspicion and restraint. The Queen, still grieving deeply, had little patience for her daughter's restlessness. Yet even amid the tension, Victoria began to recognize something extraordinary in Louise, a resilience and independence not found in her other children. She later wrote of her, "A clever dear girl with a fine, strong character, unselfish and affectionate." The loss of her father forced Louise to mature quickly. No longer just the inquisitive child, she began stepping into roles of support and responsibility. The shadows of grief shaped her spirit, not by dimming her light, but by sharpening her strength. As Louise entered adulthood, her independent nature only grew stronger. While her elder sisters married and moved into foreign courts, Louise remained in Britain, serving as a companion and helper to Queen Victoria. It was not the life she had envisioned. Though proud to support her mother, Louise longed for autonomy, a chance to live beyond the palace gates, to carve out an identity that was truly her own. Her duties in the royal household kept her close to the Queen, but Louise did not allow them to suppress her voice. She engaged in lively conversations about politics, art, and social change. At a time when most royal women were expected to remain silent on public matters, Louise was unafraid to speak her mind. Her curiosity, intellect, and unorthodox opinions set her apart, sometimes drawing admiration, sometimes disapproval. What truly distinguished Louise, however, was her refusal to conform. She wanted to pursue sculpture professionally, to walk the streets unrecognized, and to associate with people from all walks of life. These desires clashed with Victorian expectations, but she persisted. Her mother was at first skeptical, but over time came to value Louise's talents and determination. Louise also began attracting attention as a possible match for various European princes, but she showed little interest in the usual royal alliances. What she sought was more than position or prestige. She wanted a partnership built on mutual respect. Her stance was bold for her time, signaling a new kind of royal woman, modern, ambitious, and unwilling to be defined by title alone. In an era where royal marriages were dictated by diplomacy, Princess Louise made a choice that defied tradition. Rather than wedding a foreign prince, she expressed interest in marrying a British nobleman, a decision that startled both Queen Victoria and the government. After much discussion and careful approval, Louise was permitted to marry John Campbell, Marquess of Lorne, heir to the Dukedom of Argyll. The union was historic. It marked the first time in over 3 centuries that a daughter of a reigning monarch married outside a royal house. Their wedding took place on the 21st of March in the year 1871. While the match was seen by some as a step toward modernizing the monarchy, others questioned its wisdom. Lorne was intelligent, cultured, and politically active, but he lacked the royal bloodlines traditionally required for such a union. Still, Louise entered the marriage with optimism and the hope of forging a meaningful partnership. At first, their relationship seemed promising. Both shared interests in literature, politics, and the arts. Louise supported Lorne's ambitions, and he admired her intellect and talent. Yet behind the scenes, the marriage faced quiet struggles. Differences in personality, royal pressures, and Louise's growing desire for independence created emotional distance. Still, she embraced her new role as the Marchioness of Lorne, and later as Duchess of Argyll, with dignity. Louise's marriage represented more than romance. It was a turning point in royal history. She had chosen a husband based on compatibility rather than protocol, a daring move that hinted at her lifelong desire to live on her own terms. In the autumn of 1878, John Campbell was appointed Governor-General of Canada, and Princess Louise became the viceregal consort, the highest-ranking woman in the Dominion. For the first time, a daughter of the British monarch would reside in North America as an official representative of the crown. The move marked a dramatic shift in Louise's life, offering her a broader public role and the chance to connect with a new world. Canada welcomed her with admiration and curiosity. Louise charmed Canadians with her warmth, informality, and genuine interest in their lives. She supported local artists, visited hospitals and schools, and encouraged women's education and health. She also designed buildings, championed cultural causes, and often traveled without excessive ceremony, much to the delight of the public. Unlike many royals, she did not hide behind protocol. Her approach was modern and relatable. However, life in Canada was not without challenges. The climate proved harsh, and tensions occasionally flared between Canadian officials and the British staff. Louise also endured a serious sleigh accident in 1880, which left her injured and in recovery for many months. During that time, her relationship with Lorne grew more strained. Though they fulfilled their duties together, private distance became more apparent. Despite personal difficulties, Louise made a lasting impact in Canada. The province of Alberta was named in her honor, and countless schools, parks, and hospitals still bear her name. Her time as viceregal consort revealed the full extent of her grace, strength, and vision, qualities that resonated far beyond the palaces of Britain. Upon returning to Britain after her years in Canada, Princess Louise continued to redefine what it meant to be a royal woman. Unlike many of her sisters, who lived quietly in the shadows of palaces, Louise stepped into public life with confidence and purpose. She spoke out on social issues, supported education for girls, and advocated for health reforms, especially those related to women. Her causes were not always popular within royal circles, but Louise was not one to be silenced. She frequently attended public ceremonies, gave speeches, and lent her name to charitable institutions. Her presence was more than symbolic. She was genuinely engaged. Louise championed the training of female nurses, supported poor artists, and quietly pushed for reforms that improved the lives of working-class families. Her actions reflected a deep belief that royalty should serve, not simply reign. Louise also used her influence to support women's rights. Though she stopped short of directly endorsing suffrage, her writings and friendships suggest she sympathized with the cause. She met with pioneering thinkers, supported female-led schools, and often refused to conform to traditional expectations of how a princess should behave. She rode horses alone, traveled without full escorts, and appeared in public in ways that unsettled the rigid Victorian court. In a world still ruled by propriety and silence, Louise's voice rang with quiet defiance. She was not a rebel in the dramatic sense, but a reformer from within, pushing boundaries one decision at a time. Her version of royalty was not distant or untouchable, but human, thoughtful, and quietly revolutionary. Among all her talents, Princess Louise's passion for art, especially sculpture, remained the most enduring. Unlike the polite hobbies expected of royal women, Louise pursued her artistic career with determination and discipline. She trained seriously, enrolling at the National Art Training School in London, where she studied under professional instructors and developed technical skill far beyond casual dabbling. Her works were not mere novelties. Louise produced sculptures that earned public exhibitions and critical respect. One of her most well-known pieces was the grand statue of her mother, Queen Victoria, which still stands outside Kensington Palace. Her portfolio also included memorials, busts, and decorative pieces displayed across Britain and Canada. Though her royal title occasionally shielded her from open criticism, art critics acknowledged the quality of her craftsmanship. Louise's career in sculpture was groundbreaking. In a male-dominated field, she faced both skepticism and surprise. Many could not imagine a princess working with clay, plaster, and marble, let alone carving with her own hands. But Louise insisted on doing the physical work herself, refusing to pass her ideas off to studio assistants. She viewed sculpture as both a creative outlet and a personal calling. Through art, Louise found both expression and escape. Her studio was a sanctuary where she could set aside protocol and simply be a creator. In every bust she shaped and every figure she molded, she revealed a different kind of royalty, one rooted in vision, discipline, and the bold belief that a princess could be an artist in her own right. Behind Princess Louise's polished public image lay a private world filled with emotional complexities. Her marriage to John Campbell, though historic and hopeful at its beginning, slowly grew distant. The couple shared interests and responsibilities, but emotional warmth faded over time. Whispers of estrangement began to circulate, and Louise increasingly led a life separate from her husband, both physically and emotionally. Rumors haunted her. Some speculated that Lorne may have struggled with his identity, suggesting an incompatibility that went far beyond typical marital strain. Others pointed to Louise's independent nature, which clashed with the expectations placed upon a Victorian wife. It was even rumored that she had formed close attachments to men outside her marriage. But none of these stories were ever confirmed, and Louise herself remained silent on such matters. What is known is that by the later years of their marriage, Louise and Lorne were rarely seen together in private. They maintained appearances for public duties, but led largely separate lives. Louise spent extended periods at Kensington Palace and visited artistic and social circles that were far removed from her husband's world. Yet through it all, she remained dignified, never allowing personal heartache to interfere with her commitments. These trials shaped her into a woman of quiet endurance. Rather than rebel openly, she carved out her own space within a restrictive world, one defined not by scandal or escape, but by strength, discretion, and self-possession. She chose solitude over bitterness, independence over complaint, and in doing so, she redefined what it meant to endure with grace in the face of personal disappointment. As the years passed, Princess Louise settled into a quieter rhythm of life at Kensington Palace. Widowed in 1914 after the death of the Duke of Argyll, she chose not to remarry. Instead, she embraced a life of solitude, but not isolation. Her days were filled with reading, writing, and correspondence, and she remained a thoughtful presence within the royal family. Louise maintained a circle of friends from the worlds of art, literature, and reform. She hosted modest gatherings, supported charitable projects, and continued to correspond with artists and thinkers she had known for decades. Though she no longer sculpted publicly, her studio remained a personal refuge, a place where she could reflect on a lifetime that had spanned empires and eras. Her later years were also marked by quiet observation. She watched the world change around her, the rise and fall of governments, the shock of the First World War, and the evolution of a monarchy transitioning into the modern age. Through it all, she remained rooted in her values, simplicity, service, and quiet strength. She continued to take walks in Kensington Gardens, kept her wit sharp, and maintained a level of privacy rare for someone of her birth. She declined to write memoirs, preferring her story to live in deeds rather than declarations. And though she was often overlooked by the public, within the palace walls she was respected as a woman of substance, a royal who had quietly outlived expectation and outlasted history's gaze. Her solitude was not a retreat, but a choice, one that reflected a life lived on her own terms. Though often away from the spotlight, Princess Louise remained deeply connected to the British royal family throughout her life. As the daughter of Queen Victoria and sister to Edward VII, she held a unique position, bridging generations with grace, memory, and insight. Within the family, she was known not only for her sharp mind, but also for her discretion and loyalty. Louise acted as a quiet advisor to younger royals, offering perspective drawn from nearly a century of court life. Her nieces and nephews, including future kings and queens, often sought her wisdom. She had witnessed everything: royal weddings and funerals, scandals and reforms, wars and treaties. Her counsel was thoughtful and measured, grounded in lived experience rather than ambition. She shared a close, if sometimes complicated, relationship with her siblings. As the years passed and many of them passed away, Louise became one of the last living links to the Victorian era. Her presence at family events was more than ceremonial. It was symbolic, a living bridge between the grandeur of the past and the transformations of the present. Louise also maintained a role in royal ceremonies and charitable institutions, often attending public functions well into her later years. Though she never sought to command attention, she remained steadfast in her support for the monarchy and its evolving place in society. In her quiet influence, Louise embodied the enduring heartbeat of the royal family, steady, loyal, and always just beyond the edges of history's frame, shaping it all the same. As the 20th century advanced, Princess Louise watched a world she once knew slowly fade into history. The grandeur of the Victorian age gave way to modernity, and the royal family itself was reshaped by new values, challenges, and expectations. Louise, born into the formality and certainty of empire, now lived in a time of war, reform, and social upheaval. The First World War left a deep impression on her. She supported war relief efforts, visited wounded soldiers, and remained engaged with charities focused on veterans and their families. The conflict changed everything, not only for Britain, but for monarchy. The House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, to which she had belonged by birth, was renamed the House of Windsor to reflect the nation's shifting identity. Louise adapted without protest. Her loyalty to Britain had always come before dynastic pride. With the passing of her siblings, Louise became one of the oldest members of the royal family, a living symbol of endurance. She no longer attended large state occasions, but her presence was felt. Younger royals, born long after Queen Victoria's reign, still recognized her as a figure of guidance and continuity. The world around her was no longer ruled by corsets and candlelight, but by factories, telephones, and suffrage campaigns. And though she moved more slowly with age, her mind remained alert, curious, observant, and quietly amused by the pace of change. Louise had lived through more monarchs than most people read about in history books. Through it all, she stood steady, a witness to time, a keeper of tradition, and a woman who understood both the value of progress and the weight of legacy. In her final decades, Princess Louise lived a life of quiet rhythm at Kensington Palace, the same residence where she had once sculpted, sketched, and entertained fellow thinkers. Her apartments, though less grand than those of her youth, remained filled with personal touches, books, art supplies, photographs, and the echoes of a life well lived. She rarely traveled, but welcomed visitors with warmth and wit, maintaining a reputation for both elegance and candor. Louise remained keenly observant of royal affairs, even if she no longer played an active role. She read newspapers daily, followed parliamentary debates, and maintained a lively correspondence with friends and distant relatives. Her long life had made her a subject of fascination for historians, journalists, and even younger members of the royal family, who saw in her a living connection to Queen Victoria and the Age of Empire. Though her physical strength waned, her mind stayed sharp. She took walks in the palace gardens when weather allowed, often in solitude, nodding gently to curious passers-by. Staff members admired her dignity and independence. She rarely asked for help, preferring to manage her affairs in her own quiet way. During those final years, she witnessed the rise of a new world, one shaped by radio broadcasts, shifting gender roles and growing calls for social equality. Louise did not fear these changes. She had, after all, spent her life defying expectations. In the stillness of Kensington Palace, she found peace. The roaring courts of her youth were long silent, but her legacy remained, not in speeches or statues alone, but in the quiet resilience of a woman who lived with purpose and who outlasted the very world that had shaped her. Princess Louise passed away on the 3rd of December in the year 1939 at Kensington Palace in London. She was 91 years old, the longest-lived of Queen Victoria's children, and her death marked the quiet end of a truly remarkable chapter in royal history. She was laid to rest at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, and later moved to the royal burial ground at Frogmore. But her true legacy lives on in more than marble and memory. Louise redefined what it meant to be a princess. She chose service over spectacle, art over opulence, and independence over tradition. Her sculptures still stand in public spaces, her charities continue to bear fruit, and the Canadian province of Alberta, named in her honor, remains a tribute to her time abroad. Though she never sought fame, her influence can be felt in the way modern royal women approach their roles, with intelligence, purpose, and compassion. She carved a path that allowed future generations to embrace individuality within the bounds of duty. In an age that expected silence, she asked questions. In a world that demanded decorum, she created beauty. Louise's passion for sculpture went beyond hobby. It was a personal rebellion against the limitations placed on royal women. She studied anatomy, challenged critics, and held her own in a world dominated by men. One of her most famous works, the statue of Queen Victoria in Kensington Gardens, remains a lasting symbol of that defiance, a daughter memorializing her mother through her own hands. She also broke royal ground by supporting women's education, championing causes related to health and poverty, and keeping correspondence with writers and political thinkers. Her letters, though rarely publicized, offer glimpses of a sharp and independent mind, one that questioned injustice even from within palace walls. Despite periods of isolation and rumors that clouded her personal life, Louise never let bitterness take root. She remained loyal to her family and to the nation whose history she helped shape from the shadows. Her private life was complex, filled with whispers of heartbreak and unconventional friendships, but her public role was steady, dignified, and far ahead of her time. Princess Louise left behind no heirs, no personal memoirs, and no palace of her own. Yet she gifted history something far greater, the story of a woman who stood at the crossroads of empire and modernity and who chose to walk forward with grace. What do you think about Henrietta of England? Was Henrietta a brave and brilliant royal, a daughter of war and diplomacy who crossed seas, brokered treaties, and charmed two rival courts with grace and intelligence? Or was she a tragic figure, torn by court intrigue, trapped in a loveless marriage, and silenced by a death still clouded in suspicion and sorrow? And what about Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll? Was Louise a visionary royal who sculpted her own future, stood for progress, and lived a life of quiet independence in a world that rarely allowed it? Or was she a forgotten pioneer, distanced from affection, navigating solitude, and remembered more for who she stood beside than for who she truly was? Were these women the gentle force behind royal power? Or were they symbols of how easily strength can be overlooked in silence? Did their stories reveal the burden of crowns or the brilliance of those who wore them with purpose rather than pride? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales from the past. Stories of courage, choice, and the quiet force behind history. Thank you so much for watching.